Starfield is an absolutely massive game. It's so big that even the most experienced space chads in the galaxy are still making these huge mistakes, wasting tons of time and effort in the process. Like number one on this list, which I literally learned about just a few days ago after completing my first playthrough in Starfield, and I can't believe I missed this. Epic mistake number one on our list is not using a cover.
What?
That's right, Starfield actually has a cover system that you could have been using this entire time, and it's actually pretty effective, especially against tougher enemies and on higher difficulty levels. As you'd expect, the system lets you peek from behind any cover items such as crates, boxes, the corner of a building, or really anything, allowing you to take some relatively safe shots and avoid a lot of damage. Now, to use this feature, you just need to approach the edge of that cover item, hold down the aim button, so either the right mouse button on PC or left trigger on Xbox, and your character will peek around the side, allowing you to easily damage your target, and this works even better with certain weapon mods in Starfield that highlight the enemy. But an even bigger mistake you might be making right now is not checking out today's video sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. I know you've heard a lot about Raid before, but here's why you need to be playing it right now. Raid Shadow Legends is increasing its roster of awesome champions with a brand new rarity, Mythical Champions. A step above Legendary, these new Mythical Champions have a special new mechanic called Metamorph that allows them to change between two different forms. The Mythical Champions are basically two champions in one, and you can now summon these awesome Mythical Champions from brand new Primal Shards in the game's portal. Keep in mind that a Mythical Champion's two forms both use the same artifacts, the same accessories, masterings, and blessings, so you'll need to be strategic in how you use them, but the Mythical Champions are the most versatile seen in Raid so far, allowing you to completely customize your playstyle and create unique synergies across both forms. Raid also just added yet another free legendary champion, Sun Wukong. All you need to do to claim this champion is log into Raid on 7 different days between August 22nd and October 23rd. No heroic journey to the west required, just log in and that is it. And if you're a brand new player to Raid, for a limited time you now have a chance to get one of the best epic champions, Stag Knight, as well as a skin for him designed by JonTron himself. Just use the promo code JTSkin before October 7th. Plus, if you click my link or scan the QR code right now, you'll get a free starter pack with all of this amazing in-game loot. So there's literally never been a better time to pick up the game and get started than right now. Thanks again to Raid for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into some more Starfield mistakes. Mistake number 2 on this list is another big one that wasted tons of time for me early on in Starfield, and that's picking up everything. Now, if you're anything like me, the temptation to rummage through every shelf and locker in Starfield is pretty uncontrollable, but take it from me, most of the miscellaneous items in Starfield are essentially worthless and only add to your carry weight. The thing is that those miscellaneous items, while they might look cool and have interesting names, they often can weigh a ton and they actually sell for very little. Keep in mind that the price you see when you pick up an item is not actually the sale price. These often sell for way less depending on your skills, but also unlike a lot of other recent Bethesda titles like Fallout, for example, in Starfield you cannot break down these sort of junk items to more useful things like crafting materials. So yeah, they are basically completely useless unless you have a thing for collecting. Which brings us to another huge loot mistake, which is picking up weapons and armor without looking at their stats first. Now, I did this all the time early on, but you may not have known that there are actually 2 ways to loot most bodies and containers in Starfield. The first way, which I think is how most of us start looting, is simply hovering over or clicking on each individual item. This will put it into your inventory, and then you have to go into the menu, go into your inventory, just to look and see the details of what you picked up. Obviously, the problem here is this takes a lot more time, especially if you're looking for, let's say, weapons with a particular stat or a trait. Instead, what you need to do is use the transfer option. Now, this opens up 2 inventories basically, one for the body or container which you're looting, and a second inventory showing your own, and this lets you see the stats on each and every item before you decide to pick it up. Plus, a bonus is this takes you out of the game and into the menu, which is going to pause, the surrounding combat, going to give you more time to make a decision on whether you want to pick up that item or not. without taking fire from enemies, so I love this trick. Mistake number 4 on our list is going to be not using food or stimulants during combat. Now, if you've been picking up these items as you should during your Starfield playthrough, you literally have dozens of random chunks, barbecued alien bits, half-eaten sandwiches, whatever, plus lots of different chems just laying around in your inventory. All the while, these are increasing your overall carry weight, which is a bad thing if you never actually use these items. Many of these offer more than just a small health bonus, by the way. These include additional damage done, improved accuracy, but the best bonus of all, in my opinion, is damage reduction. These damage reduction buffs come in clutch when you're dealing with higher level enemies in the late game, or if you're playing on higher level difficulty settings, so that those enemy attacks don't fully chunk your health bar, and these are actually going to allow you to fight for longer without needing to heal up. Most damage reduction buffs last at least a minute or 2, so make sure to refresh these during combat as well when they wear off. Our next mistake is another I made for quite a while myself, and that is not spending skill points. Now, my issue with this early on was I wasn't quite sure what build I wanted to play in Starfield, though I eventually settled on sort of a bounty hunter / pilot / crafter build. But before I did that, I just left a bunch of skill points unspent, which was a big mistake. And the reason why you don't want to do this in Starfield is because of how skills level up, specifically through challenges. The challenges in Starfield require you to do certain things a certain amount of times, using that skill in order to unlock the next rank. For example, kill 10 enemies with a pistol, or use a med pack 10 times while in combat. But if you don't unlock rank 1 of that skill in the first place, the challenge never starts, and so all those kills or all those med packs used or locks picked or boost pack jumps, none of those are going to actually count towards the ranks of those skills and challenges. I think this becomes even more important with later tier skills like sharpshooting, penetration, crippling. Some of these are going to require hours of playtime to fill up those challenges. So basically, if you're planning to improve a skill further down the road, the sooner you can unlock rank 1 of that skill to progress the challenge, the better. Mistake number 6 on our list has to do with combat, and that is focusing on just one type of weapon in Starfield. Now, I am extremely guilty of this mistake myself. I mentioned my bounty hunter build earlier. Well, initially my focus was on pistols, so of course I dropped the skill point into pistol certification, only to find out that pistol ammo was pretty scarce at the beginning of my playthrough, and so my pistol specialist just ended up using shotguns and a rifle most of the time, just because those guns had more ammo. And I think you'll find this happens throughout the mid to early game as you pick up cool new weapons that might not fit the combat skills you already selected, but you want to try them out anyways, so those early skill points feel a bit like a waste. Now, if you're going to take any early combat skills, I instead recommend something like ballistics, as this will apply to most early weapons that use standard bullets at least, and this includes pistols, rifles, and shotguns, all at the same time, so you can feel like your skill point spreads around a little bit farther. And going back to our earlier discussion of just how heavy items are in Starfield, the next mistake is not using your companion and your ship to help you store more. Now, while I love most companions in Starfield, let's be honest, one of their biggest assets is their carrying capacity. Now, if you can stand him, the Adoring Fan, for example, has one of the highest weight limits.
Trading with one's companion is a holy ritual.
But you can also equip companions with gear that increases their carry capacity as well. And of course, your ship in Starfield is huge for carrying items and especially crafting resources, any pieces of heavy armor or weapons that you might want to be saving for later. Make sure to stash all of that stuff in your cargo just as a habit before moving on to the next area. Which leads us to the next massive mistake players make in Starfield, and that's not upgrading their ship. So ship upgrades are so easy to complete in this game, plus they cost only a few thousand credits, and they make a real difference, and you don't need to be a shipbuilding expert to make this work. In fact, Starfield shipyards have a simplified version of the shipbuilder menu just for upgrades. This is actually where I got my feet wet with the shipbuilding system, and while I do full ship builds now, upgrading the Frontier first was actually a pretty good learning experience for me, and it also made those early space battles a lot easier. Plus, you can upgrade your cargo containers, which is really going to help with the storage issues that we mentioned earlier. So to get started, just head to the nearest ship vendor, choose the upgrade option, and then select the system you want to improve and just cycle down through the options. I usually recommend weapons first, followed by upgrading your shield, and then finally upgrade that cargo space like we said. In most cases, just simple upgrades like these are going to be enough to actually finish the game on the normal difficulty setting, which is great for players who, don't want to go all in on the shipbuilding mechanic, which is pretty much like a full game in itself in Starfield. And now these next two mistakes have to do specifically with crafting, which you definitely should start doing at some point if you're not already, because the rewards are fantastic, but they do take a while to build up. So the first mistake here is selling off your basic, non-rare weapons and armor before upgrading. What do I mean here? Well, to level up both armor and weapon crafting in Starfield, you need to mod a ton of weapons and armor, which makes sense. And the easiest and cheapest way I've found to do this is just to bring over all of those, white quality basic gear items that you pick up from spacers and pirates when you're out adventuring. Before you actually sell those off to a vendor, go to the crafting stations first and attach some cheap mods to them. Like the compensator muzzle, for example, which only requires 1 nickel and 1 aluminum, or the ballistic shielding mod on armor, which only costs 1 nickel and 1 cosmetic. Doing this on every single item before you sell it, again, making sure to put in rank 1 of the related crafting skill. This is going to level up your crafting extremely quickly in Starfield, and it only takes a few extra minutes. And speaking of crafting mistakes, make sure you don't forget to tag the crafting resources that you need for research. You'll want to be searching for these all the time in Starfield. Whenever you loot a shelf or container, for example, and especially when you go to sell your extra items, make sure to search through the vendor's inventory, their resources stock, for anything which you've already tagged. It's going to show up with that blue magnifying glass icon, and just buy as much of those as you can when you go back to do your research. Now, another big mistake, especially when it comes to the main story or side missions in Starfield, is not using your scanner, but especially when you're trying to track down the next mission objective when you're in sort of a tight enclosed space. It is so easy to get lost in Starfield in those space stations or in multiple story buildings, but with your scanner, the first 10 seconds or so after activating, you'll get this series of white arrows pointing you towards your next objective. And this is so extremely helpful, especially when you need to find the right door or the right set of stairs, which you probably would have missed otherwise. And speaking of missions, don't forget to use your journal or your mission log, whatever you want to call it, in Starfield. Not only does this help you keep track of what missions you're currently working on, but more importantly, it will let you fast travel to most mission objectives, helping you cut down on unnecessary load screens. And the final and possibly most embarrassing mistake on this list has to do with mining resources in Starfield. By now, this one is getting much more well-known, which is a good thing, but I definitely wasted so much time doing this the wrong way that it's just sad. So the game doesn't really tell you, but the mining lasers have 2 versions of the laser. There's the basic one, which you use with left mouse click or right trigger, that does pretty much nothing against a rock. I mean, it takes forever to mine materials this way, but there is a more focused, almost charged version of the laser that you can get by holding down the aim button until the crosshairs come together like this, then firing while holding down that aim button. This powered up version of the beam absolutely destroys any type of rock in front of you, letting you blast through multiple rocks in just seconds. So yeah, I did that wrong for the entire game too. Thanks a lot, Starfield. But let me know in the comments what you did wrong in this game, or if there's any big mistakes I might have missed. I'd love to hear those as well. And while you're here, why not check out my previous videos, like 13 insanely useful Starfield secrets and the best Starfield builds, and I will see you there.